Now. Jumbo, Jumbe, de Shi, Bon, Jumbo, Yang, Bar, Tobe, Sangye, Ribo, Da, Shasu, De, Por, De, War, Sheba, Jide, Jeba, Kibu, Dube, Kalu, Juba, Lama, Meba, Lada, Melange, Dumbo, Sangye, Jumde, Peje, Wa, Shaya, Tuba, La, Chada, Chudu, Jazu, Jo, Jumbo, Jumde, de Shi, Shebo, Jumbo, Yang, Dabo, Tobe, Sangye, Ribo, Da, Shasu, Demba, Devara, Sheba, Jide, Jemba, Kibu, Dube, Kalu, Juba, Lana, Meba, Lada, Melange, Dumba, Sangye, Jumde, Peje, Wa, Shaya, Tuba, La, Chada, Lo, Chudu, Jazu, Jo, Jumbo, Jumde, de Shi, Shebo, Jumbo, Yang, Dabo, Tobe, Sangye, Ribo, Da, Shasu, Demba, Devara, Sheba, Jide, Jemba, Kibu, Dube, Kalu, Juba, Lana, Meba, Lada, Melange, Dumba, Sangye, Jumde, Tumbo, La, Chada, Chudu, Jewo, Okanze, Kanye, Sachen, De, La, Gomba, Zembore, Mane, Jide, De, Na, Choje, Zon, Nanda, Okanze, Kanye, So, Cheda, De, Sachen, De, La, Gomba, Zembore, Mane, Jide, De, Na, Choje, Son, De, Se, Kebo, Kyola, Chozo, Nanda, Guma, Chodo, Suzanwa, Yishi, Gyaso, Seki, Lumbora, Shaba, Jide, Suna, Lame, Wa, Gumbo, Chuji, Chola, Chozo, Senjo, Temba, Time, Dawe, Sha, Sendo, Trawa, Chola, Chozo, Dure, Chura, Siba, Suma, Ji, Nyame, Jinji, Chola, Chozo, Gombo, Tuji, Chidemba, Tamji, Kipe, Tumba, Sona, Yudin, Gyaso, Ji, Deshi, Chola, Chozo, Dabe, De, Cha, Trewar, Gir, Kiwe, Nyezon, Le, Shoji, Chidu, Dandan, Chogur, Ba, Shigur, Chola, Chozo, Shone, Joe, Layang, Lava, Dala, Rande, Shinge, Damba, Yudin, Ginde, Layang, Eva, Siam, Meja, Eva, Kunzum, Sovarge, Range, Seni, Yonsun, Nene, Sange, Tembai, Karma, Re, Marmeda, Yuma, Silva, Chukurda, Melan, Lodan, Tida, Diji, Chena, De Darada, Sonandi, Tanje, Sipahi, Gokon, Tone, Gingen, Radu, Gata, Nada, Chiwe, Lapchu, Sibe, Sole, to the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, nor of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of God and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, the supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you, who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Your immaculate 3 worlds are not incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one God, to thusness I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path of liberation, the holy field qualified with realization, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these mirrors may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of false, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by waves of aging, sickness, and death. Kunjosumla Jalo Zelo Dige Dagi Toba Dujin Chonde Gyabuga Jago Kumbo Kelongi Gende Jembo Dan Janju Sembe Gende Jembo Dan Da Jidu Jodo De Se Chomde Zamona Washi Jave Chugin Nandangi Tengen Zela Nyobar Shuzo Yan De Se Janju Sembo Sembo Jembo Baba Shireze Wancho Shiragi Barudu Jimba Zamo Jeba Nila Nambar Tashin Kumbo Ngobo Deda Layan Ranjingi Tombara Nambara Tau Tene Sangegi Tu Sedan Demba Jari Anju Zemba Sembo Jimbo Baba Shireze Wancho La Nige Jime So Rige Hu Gala La Shiragi Barudu Jimba Zamo Cheba Cheba Deba De Jita Labar Cha Nige Jime Badan Janju Semba Semba Jimbo Baba Shireze Wanjugi Sedan Demba Shari Dante Bula Nige Jime So Sheri Pu Rigi Buam Rigi Bumo Kanala Shiragi Barudu Jimba Zamo Cheba Cheba Deba De Didar Nambar Tawar Jade Bumbo Mabo De Dalaya Ranjingi Dombar Namba Yanda Bar Jizu Tao Zu Tombao Tomba Ni Suzu Zule Tomba Ni Shimayan Tomba Ni Lekyan Su Shimayan Dejindu Tsorwa Dejidam Dejidam Nambar Shemba Na Tomba O Sharibu Deda Chudam Je Tomba Ni De Tsini Meva Majeba Magaba Tima Meba Tima Dan Rewa Tewa Meba Kanwa Meba O Sharibu Deda Wena Tomba Nila Sume Sorwa Me Tushime Tushime Nambar Sheba Me Bigme Nawa Me Name Cheme Lume Yime Sume Jame Time Rume Rekame Jume Do Meji Kame Bade Iji Kame Ige Nambar Shebe Kanji Padu Yam Medo Mariba Me Mariba Seba Me Kashi Me Kashi Sebe Badu Yam Medo Deshindu Donga Wada Kunju Wada Obadan Lame Yeshime Obame Madoba Yam Medo Sharibu Deda Wena Janju Semba Nam Toba Me Bishir Yerabgi Barudu Jimba La Tenji Nede Semla Jiba Meji Chapa Mede Chinji Lole Shindu Dene Nyangele Debe Tar Chindu Tuzu Do Nambari Chu Sanje Hamje Kyang Yerabgi Barudu Jimba La Tenji Nede Lana Meba Yanda Barazobe Chanju Tungu Barazo Barasan Yedo Deda Wena Sherabgi Barudu Jimbe Nga Riba Jimbe Nga Lana Mebenga, Minyamba Nanyabenga, Tonga Tamje Radu Shivar Shibenga, Mizuwena Dembar Shivar Shate Shiragi Barudu Jimbenga, Meba Dayada, Gade Gade Para Gade Para Sangade Buddhi Zoro. Sharibu Janju Semba Semba Jimbo, Deda Shiragi Barudu Jimbo, Samola Labarjao. Chomdende, Dengeze, Delejende, Janju Sembo, Sembo, Jembo, Baba, Cheneze, Wanchu, Leso, Shejawa, Chene, Leso, Rigi, Bu, Dede, Shino, Dede, Shinde, Jidar, Kirgi, Temba, Shem, Sherage, Barudu, Jemba, Samola, Jebar, Jade, Dejin, Sheba, Namkyan, Jesu, Iramo, Chomdende, Dege, Jeka, Zedan, Demba, Shere, Dade, Buddha, Janju Sembo, Sembo, Jembo, Baba, Cheneze, Wanchu, Hamje, Dembe, Kore, Deda, Hata, Meda, Lama, Yenda, Tesera, Jebe, Jede, Yirande, Jomden, Dege, Sumba, Lamu, Page 11. Thus I have heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgriha, Vulture's Peak, together with a great assembly of monks and Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was totally absorbed in the concentration that examined all profound illumination. And at the same time, the noble level of Kuteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahatattva, was engaged in the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, analyzing the five aggregates by nature and under the inspiration of the Buddha, the Venerable Shantideva spoke to the noble Avalokiteshvara, the host of the Mahasattva, saying, how should those of good family learn who wish to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara, the host of the Mahasattva, replied to the Venerable Shantideva, saying, O Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of good family wishes to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, should look at it like this, analyzing the five aggregates by nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, karmic formations, and consciousness are all empty. Therefore, Shariputra, all phenomena are empty without characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are neither impure nor free from impurity. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no karmic formation, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There are no spheres of the eye, no spheres of the mind. There are none of these all the way up to the sphere of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, nor is there destruction of ignorance. There are none of these all the way up to there is no old age and death, nor is the destruction of old age and death. Thus there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. There is no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, all bodhisattvas hold to the wisdom gone beyond. And because there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond falsity, they reach beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times by relying on the wisdom gone beyond, fully and clearly awakened to unsurpassed, most perfect and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the wisdom gone beyond, the mantra of good insight, the unequaled and unsurpassed mantra, the mantra that comes all suffering should be known as the truth, where there is no deception. The mantra of the wisdom gone beyond is proclaimed. Tayatha Gade Gade Para Gade Para Sam Gade Buddha. O Shariputra, this is our Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn the profound wisdom gone beyond. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and praised the noble level of Bodhisattva, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, very good, O son of good family. It is exactly like that. The profound wisdom gone beyond should be practiced exactly as you have said, and then the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shantideva, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the whole gathering in the world was his gods and anti-gods and spirits, their hearts full of joy, praise the words of the Blessed One. So is the noble, noble discourse of the Blessed One.
애들은 이제 앞에 보고 있는 제대로 아니 진주 같은 거 지금 배치를 배 냠내게 내게 사치게 친구 이번에 자세서 주스 배쳐버려 버려 주죽 생게 됐던 거 진짜 되게 어려서
Now it is Thursday evening and we resume the way of the Bodhisattva, the way of the Bodhisattva, giving us our topic for our class. And it is in the Mahayana Dharma, the principal aspect of Mahayana practice. That is the training in the mind of awakening the way of the Bodhisattva.
진짜 진짜 마다나랑 뭐 쯤나 쪼고去年 생각 대바다 대바면은 이 남걸 얘기 말 대바도 거 대바지나 아니 남걸 얘기를 지난다 대들로 도요 너무 sem나 쪼난 가와도 거래 이지도 굴웅도 계심을 해서
There must be an enthusiasm for one's practice. Without an enthusiasm, there's no progress. And so it is then that we begin by developing that enthusiasm so that the qualities may arise in us. Without an enthusiasm, there will be no development of those qualities.
또 세상 다쯤 놈들 들어왔게 저도 다 먼저 오늘 저는 준주 코란 세단 제바이나 누구 당부디 아니 저주스도 저벌로 놈들이 들어왔게 저도 자주스인지 표현식이 여러 대나신 다 나랑서 다른 자주스는 놈들이 꿀웅상부 자주스는 놈투바 제기 놈나 아니 배 개변 가리 여봐도 말하면 종 가리 여봐 이도 시험을 권안에 들어왔게 보고 알아서.
And actually, in the way of the Bodhisattva, the text, the Bodhicharya begins with its first chapter, presenting the benefits of the mind of awakening. For understanding the benefits of the training in the mind of awakening, one develops their enthusiasm for it. And one must have a desire to engage in the training in order to ever train. And so one refines one's attitude at the outset in such a way as to commit oneself to training in the way of the Bodhisattva. One does so in recognition of the advantages of doing so and the recognition of the drawbacks of neglecting to do so.
다 간데 굴웅도 가르지 거래서나 다 대세 senju 선부 저발로 럽니 간데지 거래서나 아니 랑기 이 삼로 마땅와 예 동행을 나로와 빌레 껴봐 제 동행을 껴봐 지기 이 삼로배다 다다버들라 말아서 참말로 아니 랑기 되잖아 삼로 땅네 아니 다 간다 랑 삼로 땅네 땅땅땅네 랑 개변개 중요한 말에 다 상계다 장주서버 상제사와다 장주서버 누구의 랑기 되는 땅 아니 신기 되는 삼로 땅는 권한도 고알을 들어가지고 이제 이리 아니 랑진지기 예디 랑진지디 예바 교육군이 고 예진지디 예대 탐지지 자와 어딘데 이리 아니 내다 장주서는 말아봐 탑인도 삼아들지 라버 책이 이 삼아들지 그런 거래요 손으로지.
What is the refinement of the intention? What needs to occur for that intention to be refined? Pathological self-interest must be discarded and adopted in its stead concern for the well-being of others, a recognition that others suffer and that we would intercede and protect the vulnerable. We, all of us, up until this very moment, have continually been self-interested and biased, and only that until now, and have found no advantage, have experienced no gain through that consistent self-interest. But the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas have discarded that pathological self-interest and liberated themselves from cyclic existence. Just as the text describes, self-interest is the gateway to all pain, concern for others, the gateway to all fortune and good. I recognize this and commit myself to discarding self-interest and pursuing the welfare of others. This is the refined intention.
어디서 강가라다 가리 개치부 열었으나 아니 바유 때마다 시라 개치부래 바유 때마다 이나 아니 장주사 뭔가 깨봐도 내봐도 용구여라 바유 때마다 매나 아니 장주선 깨봐야 가버려 깨는 내봐도 시라 가버려서 근데 이들 바유 글로디 개치부래 아니 제가 아니 료기 답에 이를 샤고 인생도 들리지 않아서
With such a refined intention, then, we engage in our exchange regarding the Buddha Dharma. And where then do we pick up? But in the chapter Conscientiousness, one of the middle chapters of the text. For the development of the mind of awakening, conscientiousness is required. For the sustaining of the mind of awakening, conscientiousness is required. In all of these chapters, with their concerns, they all depend upon conscientiousness. One develops bodhicitta through conscientiousness, preserves bodhicitta through conscientiousness. Where there is an absence of conscientiousness, it is difficult to develop the mind of awakening, difficult to preserve it. And so this chapter of great importance, situated in the middle of the text.
다 근데 이래서마다 나 그러면서 바유 댄사게 하지만 바유 말한주다 남냠내 제약이 고디 당보 좀 되게 충고골도 고 당보 대시 충고골와 대시 충고골네 타망아 충고골 아니 남을 미기 내줘르습니다 마 충고골 가지고다 충고를 뭐 방법이요 리버되게 강갈로 다 단다도도 가르스나 다 장주고 있으면 줄라게 깨봐도 내봐 되게 그냥 치도라 아니 다 바이오 때마디 개친구 남 탐지 바이오 때문에 루나 일단 바이오 때 투에게 야라나래 끼심바 제 제가 있나 아니 냠내 삐다고 자기 어려서
Conscientiousness, taught as it is, situated as it is situated so for the reason that we in our practices, from those practices that begin with the very first turning of the wheel of the Dharma by the Buddha Bhagavan, who taught in the four truths of the noble ones, all the way through the Bhagavan's teachings of the Mandrayana and all the stages in the path of the Mandrayana, all of these, in short, hinge upon conscientiousness. Hinge on conscientiousness for the development of bodhicitta, for the preservation of bodhicitta. These, from the four truths to the upper reaches of the Mandrayana, are all concerned with developing and sustaining the mind of awakening. The mind of awakening developed and sustained itself through conscientiousness. Therefore, the whole range of practices on the path may be wrapped into conscientiousness itself.
야, 다 근데 이들자만 먼저 다 단다 준주코라는 게 시당 제바이나 아니 단다 먼저 시대베 그 바유 시야 되나라 대조 대진이가 하나 좀 밀루디 대조 니가와 대조와 어디를 섬네 바양 때 바유 때 고바 직제 아니 처음에다 벌어서는 바유 때 고바 직제 다 니미를 섬네 바유 때 고바서 아마 sabji sum yor dinala shego reso.
In the presentation of the way of the Bodhisattva and the Bodhicharya Avatara, consciousness underlies the meditation on the preciousness of the meaningful human life that is so difficult to achieve. Conscientiousness underlies the meditation on impermanence. Conscientiousness underlies reflection on the drawbacks of the mental afflictions, the klesha. In these three ways, we orient ourselves regarding conscientiousness itself.
야, 딱 말하면 삼월 땅에 발생다. 먼저 이제였다. 냠내치 거야. 굉장히다. 그러나 방향 된 거야. 방향 된 수. 아니 방향 된 거도 고바한테 뭐 여러 가지다 말아서 다 간대였으나 애니마다 말아서 단단 텐조 되지니가 밀루자 첨부디 톱을 지니기 애니마 겨 엄마스 지요. 엄마네 마 용되게 직시 다 단단 밀루 톱 심하게 나 엄마네 용얘기 마 직시 엄마네 겨와들 수 용얘기 마 직시 단단랑 밀루 톱데 대디니기 밀루 마스 직시 다 디네 파 단단 가서 싫어진 분은 아주 그도 때에다 가대 para상고 되는바 가대 para 가대스 마 조니직 오예 파니수 요니직 단데 대니직 대니 파 조니직 마수 요래서
Para drogen, que machi mala drogen?
얘네 마 용조 마직
Tene dege,
단단 마직
tene drogen.
아주 제일 중요한 마직
When we reflect on the reasons for a spiritual practice. why it is necessary, what its purpose is. What it is for us then is recognition of the preceding life and the self, apparent self that is inherited from that past life. That is that which has arrived. There is then the self too that is presently here, and a imminently departing self too. There is then this arriving self, this residing self, and this departing self. And we, in the mantra of the Prajnaparamita Hridaya, recite Om Gate, one coming, Gate, another, Gate, and another going, in the mantra itself.
어제다 이들 말한 뻔에 답대 남산 삼로 거래에서 다 어디 개와 나마다 제마들라나 안 남산로 차 깔래하고 도나 배는 아주 다니네 달로 용이요 달로네 로 제마 도이 숨도 어빼들 당신 말아서 개와 나마네 용네 다다버도 용 달라데 밀룰렌 최제 준주니 다되네 제마 남 제주로 셔 남줄에 깨네 도이 이제 숨삼을 땅 와숨이 요래서
For those for whom entertaining prospect of a preceding life and a subsequent life is difficult, consider the last year, the present year, the year to come, and you in each of those years, during the years. Then that individual inherited who has arrived to the past and is here at the present, and then the present self who attends to the teachings of the way of the Bodhisattva, and then that self which will have comprehended that teaching and carry it forward with themselves. Think along these lines.
mama de simbe ki mama chik tanda de tata 중심하게 다다하게 게 마치 마음발로 중원 규획에 마치 아숨디 삼로 땅으로 해서
We think along the lines of 3 times a past event time, an arising period of time, and the time to come.
야, 다들 인도 좀 땅도 단다게 나랑도 톱심에 밀루자 첨부디 엄마 톱을 지니 엄마게 나지어 디 유사발 때네 다른 나라도 밀루 톱돼요. 다 다른 밀루 톱을 디기 마음발로 양조 거는 밀루 톱이야다. 아니 랑도 배 동에 세와 세와도 대화두가 제약이 내가 가가 다른 밀루 디기 때는 지고고 여러 제가 아마도 류디들었다 아니다. 아야 땡전에 배 바유 땡전에 간다다. 주주가 지고를 SDG도 아니 바유고 요리 시기 여러서 놓지.
The presently gotten human life that is precious, that is ours and possessed by us now, has been inherited by the activities, through the activities of a predecessor self that accumulated autonomy and merit sufficient for the achievement of a human body, the very human body that we inherit now. And then 2, by the practices undertaken with this present human body, one may ensure that one inherits again a human body as exceptional basis for the elimination of suffering, for the achievement again in the future of a precious human rebirth. It is this exceptional basis which would utilize conscientiousness in order to practice the Dharma.
다 이제 이도 다 안다 저 치말 다 파도니 저 치말을 두두 좀 봐네 약보치는 로투니 도야 소행이 다 나스기도 나스 다 나딜 카리어스나 나딜 나딜 나는 셈 실루 다 풍보다 아니 낭샘의 지 풍보스 이열에서
That one who proceeds into a subsequent life, who is an able goer forward into a subsequent life. This is a self that we speak of, a self. We speak of a self, me, I. And that I is composed of an inner mind and an external physical body.
다 근데 이거 딱마 기부민도 마 기부도 마 단데 대오메 마 대오유 딱마 승에 가다 셈다 류니라 그게 다보잖아요 아니 셈 류니라 파간다 온주르치니 마스 직세 아니 그거 배주 당사들라 니 셈다 니 류스 니 요래서
The I, in expressions such as I am happy, I am unhappy, I am well, I am unwell. The I refers to mind, body, complex. It is the executive function of the I to deploy this notion of a mind and the body. It directs the mind and the body, this executive function, through an I.
근데 인도 마류 대오메네 마 대오메바레 마셈 기부메네 마 대오메 마 기부메바레 이네 다 기부 셈 기부메도 마 기부메바레 류 대오메네 마 대오메바레 이네 근데 대오메야 류디 마레베스네 대야마레 셈디 마레베스네 대야마레소.
Now the body is unwell. I conclude I am unwell. Now the mind is unwell. I conclude I am unwell. So yes, one is unwell. One isn't well. But narrow it to the body merely being unwell is the self entirely unwell. The mind being unwell is the self entirely unwell. But then look for where that I would reside then. Where does the I reside? When we would indicate ourselves, speaking of ourselves, I am here, we would suggest pointing to our physical aggregate, and we would suggest you are there. So I am here, inhering in physical aggregates. You are there.
류디 마이는 계속 류디 매버체디 마 매버체기로 디 매버체기요 말씀 나디 반도되기요 뭐만 영어를 다다 돼요 뭐뭐 두고래서.
Now if the physical aggregate were the I, then with the destruction of the physical aggregate, then the I would need to be annulled. But the I is inherited, the self is inherited, and then the self continues onward.
that's 이도 다 맞아 돈이 인세디 다 맞지 제거로 맞지 제주 잠바 항상 맞아 맞제니 가와제서 가와제그스나 류다 셈니를 제기래 이나양 제사가 셈도 류디 마마레 다 마스도 셈도 류를 셴도 마치니야 버려 디탄다 다 맞아 동바니 셈게 라신다 류지 라신 제제 아니 마스게 제 아니 마스게 류다 셈디 마인베 마치니야도 아니 동바니 단다 셴바차게 요래서
Dele siempre niena, tiene tomba ni kita.
다 동반이 생기나 다도 다음에 세저와 또 디탄다 시행으로
Dale siempre niena.
공부다
No.
셈네 셴베 나시니에나 다 나스나 다스나 시버와 디 얘기도는 다디 두 하여 하고서나 아니 다 하고 왔다 나게 땡기 동반이 대단히 통화 차례에서
Meditating upon emptiness is a search for the self. One searches the physical aggregates for the ostensible self. One searches the mind, consciousness for the ostensible self. When there's no self-discoverable, the discovery of the state that neither of those is the ostensible self is to fathom emptiness. One would discover that this ostensible self must be other than the physical aggregate, than the consciousness aggregate. That I, we speak of an I and we speak of a self. To discover it is different than the physical aggregate, the mental aggregate.
약간 나체당 아니 나체당 다네 공부되라 공부 나체는 그 주부주사기 공부되라 삼로탄 대가 많이 봐 다음에 디나로들 셈이요 맞아 공부되라 아니 내가 그녀도 셈게 셈용 가지게 시요 어디요 대양 나 말에 딱 나디 군인이라 봐 따봐 나 그래서 뭐 공부다는 류니 소용도 아니 나 민기 따봐래 따봐 민기 따봐 공기 여봐래 될 유지 가야 매봐 텔레파 세니 니에 매봐 어야 공부를 따는 민 따봐 쌈지 여봐 되지라 아니 딱 되지 가네 아니 딱 나게 되게 동반이 광고를 해서
A search is undertaken. One searches out the body for the ostensible self, discovers the body is not the ostensible self. Within the body, there is consciousness, and one searches consciousness for the ostensible self. There too, that self is not found, is not discovered, neither in the physical aggregates nor in the mind. But the physical aggregates and consciousness are a basis for an ascription of that ostensible self, a mere basis for attributing selfhood. But apart from the ascription of selfhood on that mere basis, there's no discoverable self. And so to proceed in the meditation in such a manner, in an inquiry into the self, one engages in the meditation upon emptiness on the basis of the ostensible self.
대단 아주 단다 주주나 대화다 동에 근데 대화 동에 스케시아디 대화 동에 냥냥이 마스기죠 오다 당복 많이 아니 게 대화 게 동에 대신에 공부점 냥냥적으로 와서
We speak of satisfaction and dissatisfaction, pain and happiness, via an experiencer of satisfaction and dissatisfaction, pain and happiness, relative to the discoverability of such an ostensible self. One would proceed in their practice.
세상 나 다지 나 숨데 나스 판에 용데 영어마베 통만 매반에 베 주스 주름 부시오지는 마 깨가 깨와 나지게 동해봐 저런 것이 용네 양깨 양시도 깨가 나지게 저런 것이 용 단단바들래 다 단단하도 깨네 내배 가도로와 단단하도 깨네 내 아니 저라는 배 최니 양내 제약 주주 고급되지 나 디네바야 깨와 치만 바 드라이브도 예스 그얘기 마숨 디숨도 야보지 삼르지 코로 거래서 당거든
And to, from a distant past, for an incalculably long time, again and over again, one has been born and aged and grown ill and died, and again been born, aged, been ill, and died over again until now, till now. And we have been born again here now and are at present listening to the Dharma, and then eventually will proceed onward to and into the subsequent life. And there are evident then these three selves that are one coming and arriving inherited, the present one continuing, and then the departing self too.
야, 딱 제왕고만의 많이 영향을 장가 집하게 주수고 미세단 셀을 장가지야 열었으나 장가지야 투야 여말 통만 매발을 했어. 직제. 세치만 파랑이 제와라 타 열어서나 아니 양이 제와들 타 열어서나 아니 왜 하장 주주 림부를 깨봤으려고 제가 림부를 제가 단단 만족을 미세 수험 봤어야지 로체 얘기를 제와 마마다 제와 치마스나 로 장가 잡으면 로그 주주 전에 하장 주주 림부 장가 전에 장가 잡아도야 근데 세 디스라나 미세 링나 로자 이니마 ngọc chủ để lo thằng cái gì vậy rồi 어째서 세디디 세 나마다 치마스나 림보 세디스는 튼든 어디를 삼고 그래서
The predecessing self, the predecessor, that is the self, the experiencer of infinite rounds of rebirth from beginningless time, experiences that duration as a duration with no beginning. And the subsequent self will experience that interminable series of subsequent lives that goes on eon by eon and is incalculable. Therefore, the predecessor in time experiences duration that is incalculable. Numerically, it's innumerable. It's incredibly long. The subsequent self experiences an infinite period too. The present living moment is finite. This predecessor self's span of life, infinite, subsequent self span of life, infinite, but the present moment, finite and short.
딱 먼저 가르치는 최저거래 전주 년거래에서 다 저한테 친해 내고요래서
Then here now why the Buddha Dharma, what its purpose.
딱 근데 인도 딱 먼저게 세디기 되기라나 저 튼든지기 되기를 세디기 동해라나 저 튼든지기 동해를 제가 세디기 대둑들 삼로 마다와 세 치마 편지기 대둑을 삼로 따네 아니 가서 냐면치 고요래서
This life's pleasures are short. This life's pains are short-lived. The pains and the happinesses of this life are short-lived. They should be de-emphasized. Brought into focus should be the great span of experiences in the life to come, the lives to come.
배나 수술 담가 여기나 원나야 나자직 수술을 니마직 나야지 당 로직 나야지 수술을 담가 여기나 아주 그 니마직 나는 지고대 담기로 왔어 로직 나야지 수강을 담기 말로 왔어 배테나 신스 아주 그 세치마스라나 배 로창가 자모토야기 동해레스 세디기 동해라나 아니 링나 아니 메시지 로자 데리지 동해를 세상 콘이 아주 양집단을 제부자 투어 보고 열어서
Now, if one were presented with the option of a year-long headache, or one could choose a day-long headache, any sensible person would choose the day-long headache. None would choose the year-long headache. The pain experienced in subsequent lives that are incalculable will be incalculable pains. The pains of the present life at most will be 100 years pain, 60 years pain. One would weigh their choice here carefully.
오야 다 디비 다 먼저 담가 만나러 치고로 와서 다 세디기 대두승이디 삼로마탄 르탄 세디기 디기 또고 담수 주나 아니 먼저 디기 중아 또고 담수 마주나 디기 마주나 제야게 베데디 대화도 동에기 남샤디 삼로마탄 디바 르탄 세치마 편제를 그동 유르부 드드 유르부를 대화 용에 동에 용고야 도 동에 용모고야 대화 토비하게 다 냠내 제야게 톱당 왕자 술을 열었으나 달랭 하나도 밀루 요요 밑 하나도라 다 세치만 대화고는 대화 두비하게 랑가 차상 가지고 나걸 열에 동해 양국도네 동해서야 나고데 수술을 열에 동해 양국도네 수술 소투야 열에 제자 달랭 아주 냠내 제고래 아니 바요 땡고래 세고다 굉장히 대가를 해서
One would be best unmistaken in their choice at this juncture. That is, to remain preoccupied with food, clothing, and status in this life, and to make one's measure of the meaningfulness of one's life in terms of food and clothing and one's reputation. That order would best be discarded, and in its stead, the better sense of anticipation of subsequent lives and the pain that they would include, or the contentment that they would afford one, a contentment that would be lasting. But should one neglect the Dharma now, then instead of contentment that would be lasting, there will be pain that will be lasting. At this juncture, with the present human body, one has the capability, one has the independent power to make the decision. That is, all is in hand now to ensure that one experiences contentment in one's future. Just as certainly it is one within one's own power too to ensure that one experiences great pain in one's future. What one does with one's life presently, what one will do through their conscientiousness in any case, thus the importance of conscientiousness now.
오야 다 데레가 다디 트레셔도래 다디네 먼저 다 기준 먼저가 다 최치고 기진 삼로도 코레 된다라 다차 치매기 대화슬라나 하장기 대화 침보를 대화 망보를 아니 세디기 대화라나 다 유유 튜튜 제 중중직들의 재산 대화 침보지다 대화 춘주직 제부 잡투바 동해 침보 연구하지도 동해 춘주 연구한 이유데 그 제부 잡투바 어디레직 삼로 냠내직 된다 땅아서 장이 셈장 동반이 검세야 된다 랑기 동해 되게 파세와 땅 대화도 두야게 탑람질에 손지.
Now this has been an aside to remind us of the purpose of the Dharma. That the purpose of the Dharma is to ensure great contentment. The greatest bliss, the greatest contentment. And to ensure it through a small trade-off where the present life's trivial pursuits and their trivial happinesses are exchanged for the long view that ensures great contentment and great bliss. And by the same token, one would make the exchange such that they would tolerate the minor pain to ensure that the greater pain in the future is certainly avoided. And thus we train in the mind of awakening Bodhisattva and meditate upon emptiness. These are our principal methods for the alleviation of pain and the achievement of contentment.
Oh yeah, that means doing also because junju na that because the lama junju chiti. 아마도 다들 시험나시 말아도 마스도 얘기 쌤다 얘기 루니도 제가 딱 얘기 담보 얘기 루스라나 딱 간다 알레 루디 파샤 루디 거다 동행 영상 땐로지 파샤 땅에 쌤스라와 땅에 쌤 나라 아니 가려다 쌤디 나로라 아니 난 쌤디 나로라 가려스나 쌤디 나로라 다 le gewa sanye le kolde gewa sanye gi sem sana rigde sem na yore le lule dunge sonye gi sem na maji bo sonye gi dunge sonya gi le ju nyumo de ya sem na de de yore so.
So then we are presently concerned with verses in the way of the Bodhisattva where we left off last week. But now the I, we relate to the mind, my mind, and to the body, my body. Well, when we speak of the body, we'll put aside the body for a moment. The body is the basis for the experience of pain. But now consider the mind that is the inner mind. In that mind, there are the awarenesses or the cognitive states that are engaged constructively in accumulating virtuous karmas. There are too in the mind those cognitive states that are primed to inflict pain upon the body, the klesha, the mental affliction.
Oh yeah, that is that. That nyumo dige 단단 가서 nyumo기 nyimi 시야기 하고 nyumo dige 아니 가르쳐서나 nyumo dige 아주 세미나라 대디었다 세미나라 내들 미 강변나는 미대로나지 세미나라 거도 내디었다 내대에 맞이다 건조기 세미나라 셈등 건조기 셈데 nyumo고 아 배주단 nyumo고 와라 쇼르 아니 다 nyumo dige 와라 쇼르서도 아니 nyumo dige 아주 셈들래다 네바치 아니 만zul다 셈나리 강에 용야 룰을 나자 용야 강가로 다 니모디기 지고야도 니모디 먼저 셈나라데 아니 코란조 베드나 대박한 지고다 코란조 가르 쳔버데 제주 셈나 제주고요 제가 셈나 디체 이 제사도 셈고 투사도 아니 만줄 동의기에 고주고요 그래서
we consider the pitfalls to afflicted mental states. What do they do? Afflicted mental states, klesha, are present in our mind's consciousness. They reside there, just as someone resides in the home, in their home. The klesha, afflicted mental states, are in our mind, and when the mind is influenced by afflicted mental states, then the mind is perturbed, the mind grows distressed, the body too is harmed. The klesha, afflicted mental states, do as they wish. Whatever occurs to them, whatever they're inclined to do, the mind follows. thereby the mind grows perturbed, disturbed, and with the disturbance of the mind, that perturbation of the mind, with that begin all pains.
오야, 근데 이거 나 유명한 수수 강변나라 배 두자 고마도 매 줘봐니 뭐 실례바이나 안고 강변나라 주 네 강변나라 좀 신다 주 갑자기 장애로 가면은 거기 되버 강요지는 고랑이 배 미기 잘라 꾸고 꾸 쳐고 쳐 아니 강밀을 센시 가르치고 그는 다다 지기로 와 센시로 지기로 와 누가 지기로 와 대나신 쌤 니모데서 먼저 쌤 나는데 아니 쌤 나파 내가 다 동해 계약이 유강가 싸주고 열에 손으로
Just as when there's a bad guy invading one's home, a thief invading one's home, they've entered and there are no defenses anymore. They have broken and entered the home. Then whatever they would do there, steal or ransack the place, abuse whoever is there, they might well do. The afflicted mental states are invaders in the mind, and they are able to cause any number of distresses and pains now as they inhabit the mind.
뭐야, 제가 들레이도 니모 되게 가다 배드나시 아니 니모 디 랑게 갑데 맞아서 랑게 셈나를 파 초와 맞춰봐지 서버 겁니 대바이나 아니 그 니모 되게 만들었다 내가 하장에 전부 제게 여바인데 아니 콜라 니모 되라다 그 셈나를 니모 디 레버들라 파 서버 마고 맞지 서버 겁데도 그내 많이 맞차라 하는 수다 그 간다 니모라 서버 공부이나 아니 니모가 가서 주 간다 네바 마지어 핑계로서데 핑계 말에 니모 가고 니모도 깨차도 가서 내 이해받다 간다 미두자게 가서 수술을 네바 모두 팬타올 말어 되나지 니모디 가도 있는 가서 팬타올 주주키는 요말 내 계약 주주마다 예 제가 콜라바 니모데가 갑대자 아니 니모데가 봐 서버 먹고 맞지 발 좋아체니 아니 약간 다 수수기 니모데가 갑대자 투바지
Following the illustration of a home invader, if there's no confrontation, if the burglar, the invader is not confronted, that is, if the afflicted mental states do not offend us, don't anger us, if we tolerate the afflicted mental state, then they go on causing harm. When the afflicted mental state is apparent, one oughtn't tolerate it, one ought to be offended by it, resist it. If one does not resist an afflicted mental state, if one tolerates an afflicted mental state, there's no case in which that tolerance will pacify the afflicted mental state. It will only amplify the afflicted mental state. If there's a bad actor, the bad actor is consistently bad. One must confront and resist the afflicted mental state.
왜 주중만도 장주 쌤이 냠내체는 직하게 장주 쌤이 냠내치도 좀 봤다 맞아 네버 지니 랑베 딱 간제 지대기 많아 지도 용다 두육배 콩알람 미딩알 네버 지니 콩엔 타이 콩가 콜 가기메 세야기다 수수로 방에 막 네지니다 마가 제사기 다딜라 서버 고매지다 냠내치 셰기 여러와티 니주 카가 차대요 그래서 이모를 가도 있나요? 그 서버 고매 여말 서버 고마 있나요? 아니 한다 냠내 근데 가야 여말에서
In the practice of Bodhicitta, the Bodhisattva practices, we know of the encouragement to, in the ordinary world, when met with our adversary, those who have in the past harmed us, those who we those who dislike us, those who we would call our adversaries, our enemies. The training of the Bodhisattva is to tolerate this person, this adversary. But this practice of tolerance is altogether different from a misguided tolerance. If ever there were tolerance shown for afflicted mental states, that would be improper, not consistent with any spiritual practice. One does not tolerate afflicted mental states.
Oh, yeah. That's the Hindu number. Also, to you, Jidengi, Jasana, could never get say or could never get say or and could never get say ever maze, could never dear to near the cure, near the talacureg, could name on which you was. Then you moved the Zula, never get say your mother, and could you call near Chayada, Kobe, your drama, but Chayada, could Racha, you were near your your mother's cook, you moved get at it, never mother family like how your mother's.
And so too, in the ordinary world, an ordinary enemy, an ordinary adversary's violence to us, harm to us is measurable, quantifiable. There's a measure to it. It can be quantified. So it's quantifiable, one, and two, it is changing. An adversary can conceivably become an ally. It is a different state altogether, afflicted mental states. The harm and violence they've done to us is beyond measure, and it isn't changing. The afflicted mental states never become allies. They are always and inevitably harmful to us.
Oh, yeah, that is share to another kind of children to the master was the odd. Get the heart and haminum, Tamje Dala. Tamje Dala Jam, Teta Kajan Narmebe, Mana Chiti Chuminu. You motobjin Dradini Kanda Chena Reptan, Tewa in Maluba, Teta Kiji Chigla Tor.
Yeah, tell me, daughters.
If the chick need
Geniale del donna fame la giornata. Perché sembra nascendo.
어디 오마 어디 fisidi water 얘들 하다 마미는 아니 가서
No, and so so the import of verses 30, 31 on page 57. They dwell within my mind, and at their pleasure injure me. All this I suffer meekly, unresenting. Thus my abject patience, all displaced. If all the gods and demigods besides together came against me as my foes, they would be powerless to throw me down to fires of hell of unrelenting pain.
얘도 얘요
And yet the mighty friend of my afflictions flings me in an instant headlong down to where the mighty Lord of mountains would be burned, its very ashes all consumed.
Oh yeah, 지금 다 되게 가다가도 쉐돼야 돼. 아주 되게 지dengi 땅 하나도 지도 나나 거기에 드라이 공어 니 고 드라이 세다 드라스 뭔지 지사 드라디기 아니 땅 아주로 가리 거기 너버티에들 체 매바 말에 체 여바레스 너 건너버 같이 여바 인당 가레스 그거되죠 딱 건너버티에 있는 아주로 가르치르스나 아니 동화다 대바다 초바다 꾸바 아니 난 지고 침보지는 않은 소주가 소 초바지 그래
In the human society, where there are groups who are allies and groups who are adversaries, these so-called adversaries are known to be via their actions, how they have harmed us, and the ways that they might harm us are all quantifiable. That they might beat us, they might coerce us, they may steal from us, they may, at the very worst, they may murder us.
아니 내 니모 디기가 딜을 하고 가르치기래서 아디로 딜을 하고 곧세 내봐 왜 딜을 니모 하고 가르치기래서 아디 된다 되다 아니 니모 디족에 딜을 하고 아니 지만 송도 돈 배녀와 남엘라 소바다 깨와 치버지 매기나 배 랑게 류다 매 예매도 써 간다 동네 첨부 용투야 예배 세매버 쇠무투가 내 용투야 여봐 대야 된 용제기 유 그냥 아주 또 근데 참에 내가 제발로 써봐도 간가 이 거리원 거 지었나 유모 또 이제 유모 되게 원게 아니 유모다 되자셔나 또 때문 숨 자와 유모도 되게 원게 아니 가르치겠으나 참에 내가 속사 레디고 원게 아니 내 손을 막 판과 지그래 손을
The violence done by afflicted mental states goes well beyond the violence done to us by ordinary adversaries, in the sense, in the reality that mental afflictions, afflicted mental states, cast us into the fires of hell, of unrelenting pain. That is, they lead us there into unbearable pain. They are the cause for the headlong fall into the fires of hell of unrelenting pain. Cause for they influence one to engage in the 5 heinous acts, for instance, that ensure birth to the hell of unrelenting pain, the Avicii hell. These afflicted mental states, principally desirous attachment, aversion, and ignorance, these root afflicted mind states, cause this to cast us into the fires of hell, of unrelenting pain, the Avicii hell.
Oh yeah, 제가 니모 또 뭐 디기스 디기 아니 강다 채나 럽장 태워야네 말로 봐서 가서다 디기 아니 밖에 가다 녀월 깨워지 녀외게 메딕 아니 전부 리기부 럽이나야 깨지지가 봐 태워나지 색을 태워나지 찌게 말로 봐체네 세 투그레스 오 제가 대나시 니모 디기 다르도 빼지 손실
Such is the power of afflicted mental states, that they fling us headlong into the fires of hell of unrelenting pain. The fires of hell there incinerate to ash even the mightiest of mountains in an instant. This is an illustration.
뭐야, 근데 태워디 뺄래 쟤네니 니모 되게기 아니 가서 다기 루디장 깨지글로 돌네 아니 예송도 동화다 배 강가들이 지그래 제가 배 가다 예외기 메디기 침보를 잡도 많이 배 매기 짜 메다치고나지 배 깨지질로 배 태워나지 수요 말로 아마 매바 수요나시 아니 니모도 저기장 다기 단대기 나라도 내주대 배람상 끼지를 지고 잡네 아니 방에 손에 깨와도 동해 요구 같은데 차시 버려서 세상 디지 어디 손
제산데 아니 르디 도르네 아니 도르마타 아니 요몽게 왕기 말 아니 냐와라 홍동아디
예외 매나라 홍네 아니 세고 지그래서 매랑기 류다 매니도 뭐 예매신
루다 아니 신디 예메 매메 알아서 루다 매디 아니 예메바
요체 류들 매들 세면 세고 지그래서
the simile conveys the force of mental afflictions, afflicted mental states, which cast one into the fires of hell. The moment the body is discarded, the moment of death, when it arises, is followed immediately by the force of the mental afflictions, that body being cast into hell, where the fires are so, where the inferno is so, that the incineration by the flames of the inferno make it impossible to differentiate between what was the body and what is the flames. So entirely do the flames incinerate that body and turn it in an instant to ash. Such is the fire in the fires of hell of unrelenting pain, where one is cast by the mental affliction.
세상 땅 알아서 지금 당장 알아서 지도 나라 미지기랑 직 내봐다 내가다 동안을 쏘고 덴지직 수역이 매나 아니 딱 예송 내를 왜 맥나를 왜 랑이 류다 매니부터 가게 못 마시면 되게 동에 되지 아니 수투바지 그러니까 시락하고 왔을 때 동에 충아지로 수투고 매나 채워들 수 못투고지로 수바 제바로 세상 딱 뒤인데 아니 가지고 딱 이모 되게 아니 지딩이 달래자 하장 새 매바 이바 인생들에서 해서
Now, if in ordinary society, pitted against an adversary who might beat us, who might do violence to us, any violence that they do to us, being naturally intolerable to us, if it is so intolerable, but then compared to the fires of hell, of unrelenting pain, if such pains are relatively minor, when the fires there incinerate the body so entirely that the body becomes unrecognizable, and there's no distinguishing the flames of that inferno from the body cast there. If afflicted mental states cause this for us, how would we justify any tolerance of afflicted mental states when we cannot tolerate the pain of an ordinary adversary? Why would we tolerate that which causes the unendurable pain of fires of the unrelenting hells?
예, 딱 한다 또 한다 먼저 지속이 동해 춘주직 메시바 된지직 동해 춘주 된지직을 수역이 매나 아니 제망에 송이 동해 친구들들라 아니 되게 장 수역두고 말어 세상 대인들 만족이 예 송이 동해 치망에 송이 동해도 많이야 같은다라 아니 세대기 디지 랑기 세대기 디지 춘주도 발렸다 아니 디네 쳐 두고 채워도 쇼도 쇼가 되게 열어서
And in short, ordinary pains, which we find difficult to tolerate, should make clear to us that pains greater than these, the pains of the hell realms, will be all the more intolerable to us. These would be assured in our subsequent lives. But to prevent that eventuality, one would wisely divest themselves from the petty pleasures in the present life. And this is implied by the verse that we would instead occupy ourselves with the Buddha Dharma.
예, 다른 전주들이 대자 다음도 되네 디 샘중 가서 샘중을 나네 다 당국군도가 제 유명한 시바땡이지 거들라
Then we will conclude the section of the way of the Bodhisattva here and resume the cognitive psychology and the presentation of the omnipresent mental factors, followed by the mental factors with determinate objects. Of those 5 mental factors with determinate objects, we turn our attention now to concentration.
예, 다 가진 아주 전부 차네. 전부 되는데 전부 걸어 이제 제일 먼저 전부 년샤기 걸어 된 롭지 지마지 용부 다시 저지스. 근데 시바 땡이지니다. 땡이지. 다 땡이지기 시야 되는 땡이지기 다 유대라 가르고스나. 땡이지 유대라 아니 먼저 다 땡이지 대야라다 류 되고 거야고 셈 되고 그거와 제단 셈 류를 강에 모여지도 류 딩징기 엠바스 류 딩징기 엠바스 뭐야 류 딩징기 엠바스 거래 손어지
This 4th concentration is preceded by the 3rd mindfulness. Mindfulness will be presented extensively again, connected with the 4 close contemplations in the sutra on the 4 close contemplations. And now to turn to concentration. To explain concentration, the cause of concentration is twofold: physical solitude, away from social involvement, that is, away from gatherings of many people, and mental solitude, free from gross conceptualization, that is, free from running after various objects of thought.
류 딩징기 엠바스는 어서 다 랑기 하게 땡이지 줄라 템보 용야 땡이지 게 된다라 아니 딩징기 엠바스 되다마다 무슨 미소 첨보여서 아니 직하게 깨줘 첨보여서 아니 직하게 되니까 간다랑라 땡이지 줄라 게게 발제 메사 되니까 네 엠바 오 데데 때야드레스 어디 류 딩징기 엠바스 대시디 인소스
The cause of concentration is twofold, and first, physical solitude, away from social involvement, that is, away from the gathering of many people, is the first cause. This is for the stability, this is for concentration that is stable, to develop such a concentration, to remove oneself from populated areas where it is noisy. The cause, what would cause concentration, arises where there are no obstacles to it. And so, physical solitude, away from social involvement.
Oh yeah, that neighbor same number embas. That same name matuya did namdo mawakena. Same la temba mawaja namdo mawakena, same thing is net to mar, same to net to marwa. Sedan sem namdo ki embas, namdo ki embas. Sedan toba yula nazo jesu joa, jesu menros. That sem ki pe ada ombu ki jesu chana anis pe miki tonze kangala pe samlo tango ya amjo koze kangsam tali sem rawa mawa kiga sedan sem rawa tiki kanga pa ma kiba kawa chiwa resu.
And mental solitude, free from gross conceptualization, that is, free from running after various objects of thought. Conceptualization, discursive thought, where it abounds, makes difficult sustained concentration. And also, when we follow after every stimulation through our sense faculties, that is, when there's a thought following after every seen thing, and a thought following after every heard thing, this prevents concentration. To close the way, to prevent that conceptualization and discursivity, one engages in mental solitude.
오야 따뜻한 시내 두별 들으라 시내기 초스 시내 두별 들으라 주만 보죠와 이제 그거 가서 또 뒤나 류 남도 제엠바 맞다 류 뒤지기 엠바다 셈 남도 제엠바 이 남수 되고 그래서
네, 나도 누구를 가르치고
다 시내 두별 주만 보요와 이zu가 야면은 류 뒤지기 엠바 야면은 셈 남도 엠바 이 가로나 수 되고 그래서
For the achievement of shamatha, serenity and meditation, there are very many necessary causes. All of those causes would come within these two, physical solitude and mental solitude. All causes for the achievement of shamatha, serenity, will be found between these two conditions that are physical solitude and mental solitude.
오야 다양 배제 신반나는 시절은 거다 시내기 주간의 시절은 셈 미벌 조바스 아주도 잘라도 근데 잘라도만 좀 조사가도 샤스도 조바스도 봐 샤바스 거로 제가 셈 미벌도 샤바 직세 아니 랑게 미벌이 맞제바 야양 템바 제마주지 야양 템바 니제 야 템바 니제 아니 미벌 셈이 매제바 템바 직세 아니 셈 미벌 야양 두스파스 지니 숨 배자니한 망보 샤바 지 숨디 아니 주숨시에요 그래서
Tani yang yang do ani chokwa.
셈미벌
양야를 줘.
셈미벌 줘봐 직세
직세.
지금 당번에 셈미벌 줘 다들 셈미벌이 아니 맞제 봐잖아요 템바 제바지 이제 아니 미벌들 양셈 제 살지 니만 모두
Tani yang yang.
어떤 레몬 뭐 샤바죠 어디서 아니 신의 기에 띵이지 기에 둘러샤요 그래서
And in other scripture, the causes for shamatha, the achievement of shamatha, are described principally as three: that there must be mental engagement with an object of awareness or object of contemplation. The mind is set upon it, just as we set one object upon another. The mind is placed on its object of meditation. That's the first cause. The second, the object of meditation is recalled continuously. And third, the exercise in placement and recollection of the object of meditation is repeated again and again.
야, 나도 이제 띵이지 이제 유지도 된듯이. 나 띵이지 그런 게 뭐도 가르쳐 그랬으나 띵이지 그런 게 뭐도 아니 쌤 미벌 랑덥지 세지도 내봐. 쌤 갈미 되는 미벌들아. 쌤 세지도 내봐지. 아니 그거 가르쳐 그랬으나 셔럽집에 땡쳐 봐. 셔럽집에 땡집에 레전게 쌤 중지라 땡이지 있으라 그래서.
Now, the definition of concentration is a mental factor that, by its own power, stabilizes the mind single-pointedly on its object and functions as the basis of wisdom. That mental function, that mental factor that has as its function being the basis of wisdom is concentration.
Pedro Caleta, so do the some of them correct Pedro some tangina. I need the European you don't want you don't want sugar, about some chat, chat was any me was some penangazo soup, long soul. Chabel, only make it betas and soul chabata to do, and you know, Jada. 지들이 옛날 양코 셈는 유리 제토고 말와 거기서 차바디 수들 따대와 인자 제 유리메 제 차바디 왕게 그 유이동을 수를 하벌 차네 배단이 아니 쌤 많이 뭐 찍었다. 쌤 유시 벌레서나 한게 유도 심어 주고 어디지 또 어디지 배도 어디지 여래서 놓지. 쌤 많이 오세나니 따투고 도와.
어지는.
쌤
아주
사서.
너. 다들 되는 라고 템포 찍고 그러. 템포 찍고 그러.
딱한테 배디
너.
배는 수 때문에 수를 하고 차대나.
너.
아니 미기도 따와는 그 수다가 따지 쌤 심바 자다. 심바 오보 심바도 표시단 거로 쌤 세직도 되기로 어디로 거래.
To illustrate the focus involved in concentration, the example of a desirable object, an encounter with a desirable object, so very desirable that encountering it one becomes exclusively fixated upon just that thing. In that fixation upon the desired object, in that height of attachment to that desired object, no matter the other stimuli to the other sense faculties, say this one is a form, this desired object is a form, seeing it, then one remains engrossed in it. And then whatever one might otherwise have heard, one is exposed to the sound, but doesn't turn one's attention to it. So engrossed is the person through their attachment on that desirable object. So stable would be a concentrated mind.
Oh, yes. If you know, Jala Chatina, Dani did Jala Chatina, and so the toy in a young so the Ila Shergamara, Dad the Chabe on Shembe, or Dad is the same Dad dear mother, you should not make taunt as a using Marajan, Kangapachiba Jargo lessons.
And then one would apply the same to any of the other sense faculties. One engrossed in a series of sounds would be so engrossed that even should something appear in their visual field, it wouldn't register. So engrossed are they with the sound, on the sound. And so any of the other sense faculties, one might think in just the same way.
Beja Kazina, Rida Dala Chaba, she's better. Rida, Dragon Book, and Dala Chan, and Susu singing Dajan Tilly on the Hammer was any and social world was a COVID. Dradil Chan, Dradil, Benyam Dash, and got Dradil now. And it's about Ian Karina for Tongo, but that runs to mobile Dajan Sega and Tilly on the Maton, what in a oh, things is significant that big brother, same Shimbak.
And elsewhere in other scriptures, that concentration is likened to the deer alert to a sound, so alert to the sound that they're engrossed in that alertness to the sound, and it doesn't register to them when the hunter actually appears and draws near, for their attention has been taken away solely to the sounds they hear. And in that height of fixation on the object, one has the illustration for just how there should be no moving the mind at all in concentration.
Oh, yeah, down so things in the Buddha Hasama, they shagging the Hama jealous and to the Jamana Shaggy. And drink of the Gomjad, Tajing of Zota, St. Joan Mass, Madi, Semda, and Luni Budi. Shan, Dang Haji, Kato, Zejo, the Gomjad is one.
And then we conclude this section on concentration here. More remains, which we will take up again next week. And now we will meditate as we have. And now our meditation will concern that ostensible self when we refer to ourselves with the word I, consider excluding the mind and the body from what that ostensible self would be.
뭐야 나도 류디 파샤 양 나지 수르 대디야 양 셈디 파알링 양조 나 하디야 그래서 딱 나다 셈니 파샤 탄에 담도 나 스남지도 와서 나한테 가도 나 생이디 내가 저 땅아 요 말에 나 요래 세야겠다 나한테 가도 미도 딱지 지고래 소리
Apart from the body, the notion of the self remains. Apart from the mind, the notion of the self remains. Apart from both the body and the mind, what notion of the self remains? Search in the absence of the mind and the body, that notion of the self that would remain. This search is the meditation.
야, 간단 나다 셈니가 좋다 보자니 파코니를 파 꾸주 땅에 파코니를 내가 되니 되게 나 스미스도 나 류들 배 꾸주 전에 죄디 치고를 뒤치려 말에 죄디 전에 야고요 뒤치나 야고요 말에 쓰는 거 간다 고바다니 나스도 왔어 류를 먹고 가시니 류를 내가 되니 셈을 내가 되니 나스도 왔어 그래서 나디 류디니 말에 셈디니 말에 땅아 가도 어디 째야지 아니 나 얘기랑 힘을 따지 지겨서다 이 뉴스마다 나게 얘기 동반이 있으니 또 공부를 해서
It is it is I who assigns activities to the mind and to the body as executive. It employs the mind, it employs the body, this self, this I. The I say the mind would do this, the mind would not do that. The body would do this, my body would not do that. It assigns activities to the mind and assigns activities to the body. Neither mind nor body searching the notion of the self. One meditates upon the emptiness of the self, for one finds no essence to that self. This is the meditation.
뭐야 가면 찍고만 어디 터트리지게 손
We'll meditate for a moment and then engage in Q&A.
오야 괜히 단마도 더 자로 지송
Inhale and then retaining that inhalation, meditate.
Oh, yeah, stable member, there's church nation, there's rules.
So if there's something that's not clear to you, then asking a question that might be clarified.
nga 생이 가데 저티하고 세고해서
I, I, that expression would be searched through.
아키우도 nga 직직직 마서 nga 드린 띄우이 nga 지기 nga 도로요 nga 대기 유세다 nga 거 그래도 어디 nga 되라시 제대 가서 nga 어디 제대 가사게 다메스 막다 직다스 어디 nga nye 지지지 당고 nga 세네 nga 초스 어디 주가 직단 제고래 소시
But I'm doing this. I'm now not well. I'm going to do this. This notion would be explored to find what is intrinsic, if anything, to that notional self. It is the inquiry into the nature of the ostensible self and exposure of a transitory collection.
뭐야 공부를 말투 받은 데 집어디 거기서 아니 공부를 하면 말투 데 집어줘라 이 그래 네 공부를 하면 나 원년 데 집어줘라 이 단지 방자 뭐야 빛나지 아니 네 셈을 나 원년 데 집어줘라 대야 거기서 말을 받은 어디서 그거 거에 자와 이모 자와 뭐 말이 빠서 어디를 해서
In the series, self-identification leads to possessive identification. I to my possession, to we to our, with the physical aggregates as a basis, an identification of a self develops, and it is the root of cyclic existence. It is the self-identification, and it is followed by possessive identification of that which is mine, which is to cause of cyclic existence, and then the series of afflicted mental states follow.
네. 아니 저거는 맞아. 지금 딱 먹어서. 야.
Thank you so much, Vidishala, for this teaching. I'm just curious. Well, I do put my mind through reasoning and see that and understand that I has no inherent existence. Neither mind nor body is I. But when it is said that it is I who assigns activities to the mind and to the body, so to me that I is the mind. If in that context, if it says that it is I who assigns, so to me, just those words, it implicates that in this context, the mind is I.
아니 그래라 우리 지지진이 다 랑싱이 주베 다 매버디 하고 그러라 아니 이 랑싱이 주베 다 매버디 아니 주 고그relabna 심마이엠바 류양마이 옌베나 아니 다티 가와요레 라 이나양 기시기 덴제송송아 아니 nga seridi karele sejijina nga seridi and similar like a taken ra and lula yang and culture taken like a taken similar lula like a taken di nga seridi then this sune like a taken di sim yingure Jason cup turn la, and they get taken. Cause you taken, Simungo.
What you would rest, what you would rest. In a young, similar young, kanda sem di sam good, di sam you mare. Di chichogo, di chogomar, say sunigi. Young sem crown la young, let go you tani.
This is raising a big issue. Yes. But the mind, when the mind reflexively says of itself, this mind would do this mind would not do that. This is allowed, this is not allowed. This reflexive mind, beyond that which is assigning to the mind, this self we mean.
Sendanga 풍분이 이렇게 집어지게 하는 풍분. 다 권이 셈다 풍분이 말한도 나라 예 그래서 랑셈 지루 어디니 말았어. 권이니도 예 바로 대다 다당 아주 세리보다 강갈로 가르치고 왔으나 류디 말한도 딱지 제사기 뭐그 미기 동야 유도 예와 인데 다지 시도고요. 다 셈스라도 남사 레벨을 두고 여러 가지 다 세리잖아. 레버가 지지 레버니 지도 사고로다. 다 레버 데 마인바야 레버 디나래야 내가 리지 셈지 여바지 건조 도바디 사고르다. 비워. 다 이내 셈딩 나래 마레스. 아디 제버 더 대가 가도록 왔어. 이제 이내 맞으잖아. 네 류다 네 셈스. 네 류다 네 셈스. 그게 나스 대샤 그게 셈다 그게 류니 장가제도 와서 어디서
The body is external physicality. The mind is internal. And when we consider what apparently there are the external body and internal conscious states. And we can examine the body, that external physical body. This can be done. And then when the inquiry, exploring consciousness happens, it happens by entering into the brain and identifying what in the brain would be that interior conscious state, and whether in the brain there is this, in a conscious state is a matter of uncertainty to the scientific community. But where we are now is in a consideration of whether the mind, the conscious, internal conscious state is the self or not. Because we speak of our body, saying my body, and we speak of our mind, saying my mind. And we have our self, and we put it into two relations. Our self related to our body, and our self related to our conscious mind.
Tama zo nyamlena ma lela. Ane nyamlena le du tamba ma zo ge sem ye tanda ma zo ge samlo tasagi sem ragba digin ma sadane garu ma pa ka ro pangjerwa sem de pangjer ta sem chamujor ta chamudeya ma dida lungdi chiwjebu 네 풍부디다 류 단대기 류디다 그게 우디 카케루도 우디 류드마 던루도 마디 거여다 룽냠도 여래 류냠도 여래 제가 디코 가다 마디 룽레 로스 치에 예베 마치 룽 파치는 데가 아주 여바치 냠랭 날레기 여래서
Similar local shafe nga yobadi nyamlen la keriyo.
nyamlen chidu 아니 받은 것도 다나 아주 다다 배주 땅에 쌤 되게 벌어 까 빵대로 매우 차루로 가루 치워 요새래도 쌤 라와 벌어가 쌤 참몽원도 요구로 와 쌤 참몽원도 요도 잠바 아니 랑이 류디다 다다 나게 류드게 쌤 세디 아유사르와 아니 쌤 참모 치마도 얘기 마들레 사르와 단대글로 마기 가사 다 지마 파도 얘기 마들레 사르와 제가 이리 단다 쌤당 마스네 가가 여버지 냠내지 주 가가 여 단다 모두 대시 가는 나도 가가 여버지 이어래서
그래서 yani sizin öyle şartı samla yani
단다 마스야
dada gaseri gaseri hani yine yani jokin çek tamam hani zumbi hani kaka yan çağır
마사월레서 그래서 때 마사월 다들 나한테 가서 다들 바 돈이 맞들려다 저 돈이 맞들려와 제가 딜러 두자마 샘당 마신 카 저에도 나 저기어데 샘비 가서 제가 군이 니도 와서
hani lungdiyan karres geçidiler ya lungdiyan çamadi karres
말봐 다들 저들 롱디 그런 뜻이 가라 롱디 가서나 롱디 그 제일 간제 제만 그 얘기 롱 참모들어 롱 라버드 가루와 롱 집어지게 한다 롱도 샘니부터 집어지게 한다 롱 참모되나 롱 라버드 샘 참모디 파 롱이 샘 차로와 단단 아주 샘 참모디 요말 녀디어 다 제마 카가 쳐도 샘 라버드기 단단 알없어 샘 라버드 પર 가사 다 샘 사와 샘 참모들레 되었다 참모디게네 고 깨와랭거와 그래서 드린냠도 롱데 냠도 열어 롱도 샘니부터 냠도 더 셔로
in the implementation of these considerations in practice, it is the observation that the executive self of gross conscious states is eventually abandoned. It's relinquished at the time of death and annulled. The executive conscious states, that conscious mind. And what arises in its stead are subtle conscious states. The moment of death, when the body is parted from its animating breath, at that moment, the I and the self related to the body and to the coarse conscious states is annulled and disappears. And at that moment, that notion of self connected with gross conscious states that has been active during the lifetime comes to an end. Clear light arises. The coarse conscious states are annulled. There are subtle conscious states. Now, the ostensible self of gross conscious states disappears. Then a subsequent life and incarnation occurs. In the moment, then the notion of the self and the mind, the subtle mind, are decoupled.
그는 코시스 마시스 너도 나가디 나 샘디 저메바 차사로 왔어. 세상 다 이제 샘디 저메바 차도 샘디 가사래. 아니 마디 고 룸타모다 뭐 거기 셰바 타모도 모두 줘리. 아니 저와체마 도구로 와서
ngadi gang ne ro ngadi gang ani lung chama de ani kewachima di
저와체마
la
그래서 또 얘기 룸타모도 나 샘 타모도 그래다 시도 차가 세다 용sem이 용롱다 용sem이요. 군이 저지만 거 도시하고 들이 안덱sem도 가사로.
We say this person died, and we ourselves die. When we die, the coarse consciousness and an associated notion of self disappears. Subtle conscious state, extremely subtle, of clear light, the primordial consciousness is present for incarnating again. Are there others?
Thank you, Gustavo. It could it be said then that that sense of I is like, I mean, I guess I've heard it described this way, the sense of I is like a hallucination. And if so, when we're talking about not tolerating mental afflictions, are we using that kind of hallucination of an I to disrupt or suppress or otherwise dissolve the mental affliction, or is this something else? I guess maybe more succinctly, or maybe this is a different question. What recognizes a mental affliction? And is a mental affliction something different than, is a mental affliction just an aspect of mind?
Listen. Any dark city, not city, any guma some rabo, any guma some yembade, yembe namsha, yembe keche di gonu, chiche. That chitan gishi ki dinner sumberwa. Nyomon la any sogomche yomare. And the that kelte mazo nyomon la kapte chak gona kapte chak in the da red amare chikse. That the nyomon nguzin che tupkin chik godamago. That is it. The next down the any da se da serie di yamina da ngar zimbelo dan ngair zimbelo di ani nyomonge nampa da some rebe. It is so just this question is exceptionally
ko nimu ngo shinyi di nimu ngo chue na ni nimu de la gyön du tani nimu gyön du tani nimu pangba dewa tani di nga singi di yore su shi
self-identification and possessive identification of I, the expression I, and mine, the expression mine. These self-identification and possessive identification are the view of the transitory collection. That is ignorance. That is the afflicted mental state that is the very root and principal cause of samsara. Then, regarding an identification of the afflicted mental states and a confrontation with afflicted mental states, there is a self for this, that I and self that does recognize a afflicted mental state and sees its disadvantages, their disadvantages, and the call to recognizes the call to abandon the afflicted mental states in order to know contentment. There is a self that recognizes mental afflictions too.
Oh yeah, that nga tanda chana nga lawa di nga di yore se di kumbu nga zimba diya mare sem nga zimba diya mare di mayimbe nga chi kumbu da sem nipu di pa shaani yangyo nga chik samlo tansachi yorwa, di nga di nye wores, nga di 아니 칼레지 요래 사디 칼레지도 되게 자와 가르치기도 아니 쌤디다 많이디 매나야 나 지금 여봐서 칼레지도 어디 쌤이 사디 나디 이제 도 삼나 아니 어디데 나디기 아니 다 가데 니모 기는 다 그래 아니 니모 방법을 대화 이거 따니디 나랑 그래서 이내 나디 거기를 공부 나지버대 말에 쌤 나지버대 말에 코니 파샤니 나지 요래 손지
Regarding the self that there apparently is, it is in relation to the body or in relation to the mind, then apart from the mind and apart from the body, again, that I think through and identify where else would be found support for the notion of I, apart from the body and apart from consciousness. Search for it then and find it and recognize it as apart from the body and the mind. And there is a self that recognizes and identifies the mental afflictions. But the search that would occur is to find that ostensible self where it resides apart from the body and apart from the mind.
저 민기 딱에 나스지 고잘라 그리네 고잘라디 민디 메나 잘라디 예 두야 미와 말와 민디 딱벌 단에 잘라디 요 그냥 탭스도 좀 그걸 민디 탭 민 토벤자 아니 민디 탭 통도 좀 남산 탭라디 로를 샤라디 그 민디 딱에 온 거에 로를 샤워를 마도 민디 딱면은 로를 샤르고 말와서
So then the mere nominal self. Objects are undiscoverable before they are ascribed a proper noun, a noun, name. We, among objects, ascribe a name, an appellation to an object book, so that when encountering that which has been ascribed the label book, with the label book, that book appears to the mind, it registers with the mind through mere nominal attribution to objects. It is a nominal self.
근데 또배 따봐 땀지 예봐. 왜봐 다 책이 봐 따봐 땀지 예봐 마도 곧 거기 따봐 나신 놀을 차라 나신 chen 그 유디 밖에 유코랑 뭐는 매봐. 뭐 된적이 다 단단 동반이가 전다 가는 최담지 된중이 마스 된이 중앙 아주 민기 따봐 땀을 중앙에 대를 합을 최들을 봐 유주 zen이 탈통이 예 매봐. 된대지 니언도 좀 다 최고 상신 내루디 아니 셈마 연구를 해서 내 샤송
The self is merely nominal. Ascriptive activities ascribe names to objects. Afterwards, they are discoverable. Objectively, they don't exist in the manner, in a manner consistent with the label ascribed to them. They are undiscoverable, save for the name given to them. All phenomena are merely nominal. We speak of pratitya samutpada, dependent origination, that phenomena depend upon causes here in mere nominal phenomena that condition for their phenomenality is the very ascriptive activity. The self is a mere nominal self. All phenomena are mere nominal phenomena. And we'll conclude here.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
No, we'll conclude with words. The time has come. Yahweh Wamburandangirji. Dharma Sumbe Dara Gunduryan Jambe Yangi Shison Tembe Rimba Kuzan Rangi Jo Nine Rube Ganam Yeje Jo Rangi Jijin Tobe Langi Ne Shura Tsewe Rambi Taki Roe Yigi Mumba Sejene Gawe Temba Yuri Zinguruchi Temba Rinjin Choge Magyambam Yapyan Yambar Gurve Jode Ninje Chamba Yera Kebai Penda Deje Sewar Shebar Sho Seje Gawe Mejon Chele Legro Chanju Alji Ribegan Tarke Namye Yela Pede Gawe Zeba Rindu Jamgurje Ramzan Rube Duye Broje Gagin Seje Midan Bime Sera Gudu Jave Mawahi Nanda Landa Java Magurje Kanze Tivo Jolon Chujuze Sujin Rula Zumba Deise Tuden Namye Tadu Rojeje Raji Jadu Chugur Yaguchi. From my two collections, vast the speeds that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may have become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind, wisdom, eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my life, Manjushri. May I find the best of the paths of the complete teaching, and may I please all the Buddhas by practicing. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. with my heart going out with great compassion,
Passion.
in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined, may I offer this treasure of happiness to aid all sentient beings. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by following the complete graduated path to enlightenment and the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings that eliminate adversity and make things conducive for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may he always be held by the might of God, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere.
Dāgī
Jīnyē sābē gyāwā dī tēnān rōwā kūlā gāmbēnā Tēpārā jīdō lōsān prabhā yī tēmbē yīmbō rīndū sēnchē shō Pārē rāwē pūrvē shīngkān dē pēnān dēwā māyē chūngwē Tērē sēwān tīnzī gyāsō yī shābē jīndē pārgū tēngyū Dāmbē bāngbō jīdā kīmbā dāng, kūndū sāmbō lēyāng dēshīn. Tēdā gujī jēsū dālū jī, gyāwā dēdā tāñjī rādū. Tūsāng shēbē gyāwā tāñjī gīs, mōwā gāngā chūdū māmbā dēr. Dāyī gyāwē tāwā dīgū gyāng, sāmbō chūjī rādū. Yanjo semcho rempo je ma ye bana gigirich Yewa yamba meba yang One gondu lube. I dedicate whatever virtues I've ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lord Drop to shine forever. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful sinners, please remain until cyclic existence is ended. This is the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too. Realize things as they are. Also, I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect examples. I dedicate all these fruits of virtue, with the dedication praised as the best, by the victorious Oskan ones of the three times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva deeds. May the supreme jewel Bodhisattva that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase forevermore. Thank you, and good night to you all. I who go to bed, and then I who will rise in the morning, are they one and the same? Examine that tonight.